Deciding game, last shot.
Allan Houston. Houston ducks under. Got it! With 8 tenths left.
You don't know things that it impacted until later. Like when people tell you, my goodness, man, my whole block was like silent. Everybody was stopped. You feel like you are part of a moment in history. Self-belief is so powerful and definitely falls into this category of faith. And then he said, in your case, in your faith, in your religion, that self-belief still comes from God. In the 90s, the way we had to score is different now. It's a smarter, more efficient way to play, but I'm not sure if it's as fun to watch. My father was a pioneer, one of 3 of the first black scholarship basketball players, and he won 2 national championships. You have to be prepared for your moment. Legacy is a verb. It's not something that you look back on. I'm actually defining that right now. I just want to help people just be better.
First of all, this is my voice. I'm Tim Green, and I have ALS. But this podcast isn't about ALS. I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I don't feel sorry for me. I'm a father of 5, married for over 35 years, a New York Times best-selling author, an NFL first-round pick, and a practicing attorney. This is Nothing Left Unsaid, where my son Troy and I sit down with extraordinary people for raw, honest conversations about life, its toughest trials, and greatest triumphs. My voice in today's episode is powered by 11 Labs. Today we're joined by someone who needs no introduction to basketball fans, Allan Houston. He was a 2-time NBA All-Star, an Olympic gold medalist, and one of the most iconic shooters of his generation with the New York Knicks. But Allan's story goes far beyond the hardwood. He's a man who's taken the lessons of discipline, faith, and leadership from the game and poured them into mentoring, entrepreneurship, and building programs that give back to communities across the country. Allan, you grew up in a basketball family with your dad, Wade, making history as a coach. What lessons from your father still guide you today, both on and off the court?
Well, first of all, again, I just want to thank you, Tim and Troy, for having me. When I heard I was invited, I was excited. My wife was like, guess what? You're going to get to go on this show. And I'm, aside from the obvious of your story together, it's inspiring. And it reminds me of, the question you asked is in that, growing up, you just don't know any different. You just see what you see, you do what you do, and you learn what you learn. And I was fortunate enough to have learned from 2 very dynamic leaders, my mother and my father. My father was a pioneer from the moment he stepped into Louisville, Kentucky. He was one of 3 of the first black scholarship basketball players in 1962. Then he became the first black assistant coach. They went to 4 Final Fours, and he won 2 national championships as one of the best talent evaluators in the 80s. And so for me, I just saw, the first thing I saw was love. And, seeing that every day, although there are challenges from what any child would have growing up in a family trying to make it, the challenges and struggles, but I saw love, I saw commitment, I saw a commitment to community, I saw a commitment to academics, a commitment to faith, just a commitment to each other. So whatever they did as an occupation or lifestyle, I felt like they were going to wrap it inside of those walls of love, like as you said, commitment, leadership, community, and they were very consistent. So I learned to walk on a basketball court. Literally, my father was just coming from playing basketball in France, in Strasbourg, France, and my mother had me, and he went right into coaching to try to, make ends meet. They were both teachers, they were both educators. So for me, the lifestyle of basketball, education, family was where everything started. And I was around some really, really good players, talented players, high school players, college players. And because I had 2 younger sisters, they all became my big brothers. And as you all know, like when you're a coach, you're not a father to your own biological children, right? You're a father to those you're coaching, or a mother if you're a women's coach, right? So uh, that was our life, and being around the game now for over 40 years. Um, the thing that I kind of appreciate now after seeing it from so many different levels and aspects is the balance with I thought they kept it, right? Because I have 7 children now. My wife and I have 7 children now, and my youngest is probably going to be the one who sticks to basketball. Well, he's 13, and I'm starting to recollect a lot of things and nuances, and just asking God for wisdom on how to approach certain things, conversations, and understand their perspective. But again, I think our faith, our Christian values, and not just the values themselves, but how I saw them apply them. Because we can talk about values, but how are you actually allowing them to govern your life is really the exercise. And so yeah, I got a chance to see that in an early age, and I'm grateful for that foundation.
there anything that your dad did that as like a kind of the more the coaching hat that at the time you were like, man, I don't get this, and then now looking back on it, because that's what I've found with I've got 4 kids now. I'm not quite to your guys. My dad's got 5, and you've got 7, so
Yeah,
I gotta get my numbers up. But
yeah,
when I look back on things now, like with my kids, I'm like, man, I can't believe my dad or my mom or my parents or my like I see so many things now make sense that when I was younger, you know.
yeah. I mean, I think I'm starting to see that more as a parent now than as a child, because when I was a child, you know, our lives were so busy, and I didn't really get that type of intense relationship with him until I got probably when I played for him in college. When I was younger, it was following him around, you know, and a lot of the camps, the players at the camps, the coaches that he knew were the ones kind of going through that with me when I was younger. But I remember watching him teach in camps, and obviously we'd be out in the backyard, and my biggest memories were just playing against him one on one in the backyard until I finally beat him. And then we didn't play. Then we didn't play anymore. Um,
That
but
ended it.
yeah,
How
that was
old
it.
how old were you?
I was 14. I was a freshman.
That
Um,
must have that must
yeah.
have
Oh
killed
man, it was a shot that heard around the world, man. I dunked, and I ran in the house, and that was it. After that was just rebounding. uh, but you knew it was a time coming for he says it like it was a time that was coming, and it happens to all of us, and I know it's going to happen to me, but it's not going to go lightly. But I think you know what, it was just, man, I just felt like I had a relationship where I just respected him, and a lot of it was because of the respect that people have for him that I respected. And I think that really gave us a little bit of balance. We definitely had our bumps and bruises, man. But if I hadn't got a chance to play for him in college, man, who knows how our relationship and story would have gone, because it was very challenging going through that together. But man, it was so rewarding, just making our relationship better.
When you think back to your days in Louisville and at Tennessee, what moments stand out most as shaping the man you became?
Uh, Man, that's a great question. I mean, there are. I'm going to more of the personal ones, where he had to really sit me down and challenge me a couple times. Um, During that time, it was we were in a very unique situation. The Louisville had its success, and here I come having my own level of success, and so nobody got to see a lot of the failures, right, and a lot of the things that kind of went sideways. And there were a couple of times where he had to really, challenge me and just kind of things I was being a typical teenager and saying like, look, man, the most important thing is your character and your education. And he just didn't say that, right? My parents just didn't say that. There were times where, they made real um, ultimatums, for me, right? And I think one of the things that one of them that stuck out to me was when I was a senior. I committed to the University of Louisville. He was still assistant coach there. I had just been ranked top 5 in the country, and everybody. It got to the point where other schools didn't even really ask me if I was coming to Louisville because they knew I was going to play for my dad at Louisville. And they were one of the top teams in the '80s. And when I signed that November, the very first signing date, uh, everything was great. That following April, he's starting to get interviewed for other head coaching jobs. He becomes the first black head coach, SEC history at Tennessee in April. And here I am like, uh-oh. Like, there's no way I'm staying at Louisville now when my father got the head coaching job. It's such a historic job in history, right? So at the time, there was no transfer portal, right? So we had to go through this arduous process of appealing to the NCAA, and we didn't know what was going to happen, right? Like, at the time, there were pretty much 3 options. One, which is, okay, this is the ideal. You can get out of your letter, go play for your father, 4 years, no penalty. Or one, you can go play for 4 years, but you're going to have to sit out a year. Or the third, if you leave, you're going to have to lose a year, right? So at that time, my father sat us down and he said, look, there are 2 options here. You're not losing a year. So if they tell you you can only play 3 years of college, you're staying at Louisville. And at the time, I was, and there was no question about that. He wasn't just saying that. If you think about today's world where people aren't even really thinking about playing 4 years, right? And if they think about playing a next year, it's how much money am I going to get for where I need to go. I'm not mad at that. I'm saying that the difference in the time and then what his mentality was, education, character. He said, I've seen this story before. I've put people in the NBA. I've seen the stories. You're not going to be one of them. You're going to get your degree, you're going to get your education, and this stuff's going to be here. That was basically, and to be in our position and for him to take that, nobody knows like that part of him that really shaped, a lot of things of a lot of who I am today.
If your dad wasn't a coach, obviously you're going to go where he was, but if he wasn't a coach, where do you think you would have gone to school?
It's so hard to answer that question because I was Louisville through and through. I didn't even look. I didn't even really pay attention.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
It was like I was born to play for Louisville at the time, and all of a sudden, so it's hard to say. I mean, I did like Duke. Duke gave me, they showed me some love early in my high school career. I would say they would have probably been somewhere in that list. But I had some, family history at other schools, and it really is hard because so much of I think why athletes choose is because of relationship. You think about Tim when you were coming up, and Troy, like the coaches you played for, those relationships were heavy and they were weighted. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to answer that.
I get it. One of the main reasons I chose Syracuse was because my former high school coach, George O'Leary, was there. Allan, I have to ask for all the NBA fans out there, you played in some of the Knicks' most iconic games. Take me back to that shot against Miami in 1999. What was going through your mind at that moment?
Wow. Very a rough season. We were just coming out of a lockout. A lot of changes during that year. pretty tumultuous, you know, roster changes, shortened season. We were really just starting to get to know each other in that spring. The season didn't start till I think maybe January. And so we had a really, it's 55 games and it was a whirlwind. So by the time we got to the playoffs, we just felt like, man, all right, this is actually a refresh, restart. You know, let's kind of show who we really are. We had to win 6 out of 8 games to make the eighth seed. So we're the eighth seed. We didn't feel like the eighth seed from a confidence, from a preparation level. Miami, we'd had many battles with Miami, so we felt like we didn't feel like they had any mental edge over us. But yeah, you get to you get to a 5-game series, and there really doesn't. If you win one road on the road, then think about that. You know, now it's anyone think it happens. So we just wanted to put ourselves in the best possible position, have a chance to win at the end, and ran a play that everyone knew. They knew it. And we had run the play over and over again. And the thing I like to tell about that story to young people is you have to be prepared for your moment, because the ball, there was a broken play right before that, and we didn't have a timeout. So we had to kind of organize ourselves, run the play, execute the play, and you didn't have time to really do anything else. But you run that play over and over again. You find your crease, and you know how many times as a little kid imagine being in a moment like that. And so here it is. You know, got a good bounce. I do feel like it was a little bit of redemption because we played Miami on the road earlier at the end of the regular season and had a little tip in, like a quick tip in at the buzzer, and it didn't count. But they didn't have instant replay, they didn't have the red clock. And I felt like, you know what? This is kind of like some a small little payback in itself, you know.
Well, don't lie.
Bigger stakes, but we got the justice.
When you got, so you didn't have time for the timeout, but everyone knew the play that you were going to run. When that play got called, did you feel anything different, or was just you tried to stay level head and routine shot like always, or did you get like a surge of adrenaline or nervousness or any of that?
I think in those moments you can't really think too far ahead, because if there's not a good screen set, if you don't set your man up to get the ball, then none of it happens in the first place, right? So you literally have to kind of take it second by second, moment by moment. And usually I get the ball at the top. But because Dan Marley was trailing me, and I knew I only had 2 seconds to get the shot off, I didn't have a lot of time, when he was coming behind me, so I didn't want to go out further from the basket. Right. And so I kind of made a little curl, and Charlie Ward, Heisman Trophy winner, one of the best point guards that we've had, threw a nice little bounce pass in the pocket. And again, like, so many things have to happen well. Like if he didn't throw a good pass or there wasn't a good screen, then, you don't have that play, so all you're really thinking about is that, what do I have to do next to execute to give myself a chance?
And did you know at the time that was going to be, like when that ball went in, did you know it was going to be kind of like I guess, maybe it's hard to say for yourself, like blowing smoke up your own, but like it was a pretty iconic moment for the Knicks. Did you know when that went in? Did you know like the importance of it?
I mean, it's a deciding game, last shot. I mean, I think most of that is kind of like rare. It's right in front of you, but like you don't know the things that it impacted until later. Like when people tell you, my goodness, man, my whole block was like silent and everybody was stopped. And you hear stories like, man, I dropped the TV on my foot, but it was worth it. Or, those are the things you don't really realize. You feel like you are part of a moment in history, that kind of marked history. And that makes it feel really cool because, again, as an athlete, you don't know when or if you'll get those moments. You just prepare for them, and literally every time you step up, it could be one of those moments. So, as an athlete, you don't know when that moment is going to be the most impactful or iconic, other than just like look at what Jalen did in Detroit. When he hit that game winner against Detroit this year, it's like at the moment I got to make this shot, I got to get it off, but not until later do you like, man, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so yeah, I mean it's just like again, man, it's just special to say you were a part of it. I've been part of where you miss. Um, I think that the thrill is having the opportunity.
And you obviously started your career in Detroit. What made you sign with the Knicks?
Uh, Man, I felt really to sum it up, I felt much more valued. If I had to really sum it up, I mean, there are a lot of things that go into that answer, but I- you know, in your career, when you get that first contract, then you have a chance to get the second one. That's the one that kind of like, okay, I'm really trying to establish myself and establish my identity, and I want to contribute to winning and success. We were building something in Detroit, but um, I don't think they saw um, what happened next. Like they would have had to sign me, then they would have had to sign a couple other young players, and they I don't know if they expected New York to come up to the number that they came to, and I don't think they expected me to like say, "Hey, I'm ready for this. I'm made for this." And I think they thought I was comfortable in Detroit. And when it came to the offer, yes, the money was a big role, but I felt like their vision and where they were like, hey, you're going to be able to help us get over this hump. In Detroit, the hump hadn't been really built yet.
How did it feel to carry the weight of New York basketball during those years, especially under the spotlight of Madison Square Garden?
I found that my foundation and my faith and family and just what I learned from the first question you asked was really what allowed me to settle in on this is who I am first. Because I knew like the struggle was that we weren't quite in a position to probably contend for a championship. Um, but I realized that my role was to give us a chance to win most nights, give us a chance to advance in the playoffs, and also just be a good representative, of the organization, of my family, of the city. Like when you're a New Yorker, like we had those years where we were close, and then we had a couple of years where we weren't as close, but fans and people all over the world who were New Yorkers and not New York fans, but New Yorkers in general identified with the Knicks. And there was a certain feeling and attachment and an association and experience that they had. And I felt like my responsibility was to maintain that in as much a positive way as possible. Until there was another chance that the organization had to get back to close to winning it. And that was really I was very conscious of that, but I was more conscious of what how God had asked me or called me to walk during that process, and that's what carried me.
You said you guys weren't in a position to win. What was the missing piece?
I mean, a couple of years, it was Patrick had left and Spree had left, and then the team kind of has to reshuffle. Um, and now being on the other side of it, you understand there are just certain things that people never know, decisions you got to make. Cultural, financial, and when you line up against other teams and you know where you stack up, you know, um, and so I think for us, it was like, hey, let's put ourselves in a playoffs hunt and give ourselves a chance. We lost to Pacers after in 2000. We lost to Toronto in 01, and essentially didn't really get back until I think it was 03, 04. We were the eighth seed against New Jersey, and I barely even played that year. That was actually the year I think I decided to retire the following year. So it was frustrating because of my physical limitations at the end of my career and just having the experience I had in my first half of my career in New York to the second half. Um, but you have an idea, of what you're facing, and when you're on those teams that you have a window, you got to do every single thing you can, you know, to to maximize it.
You were known for that smooth, pure jump shot. Was that all natural, or did you have a certain practice routine that built it?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't really gotten asked that a lot, but I'm surprised that I haven't. So from it, man, my dad had a natural kind of build and release. I want to say some like good shooters or great shooters. They don't ever admit that that's natural. You know, um, I'm not going to say it was natural at all. I would say that I felt like I was a good athlete, had good eye-hand coordination, you know, picked up golf and I love golf. And so things that I picked up, you know, from an athletic and coordination standpoint, it wasn't as hard. But I think shooting is one of those things where I don't remember where I felt like, yeah, man, I'm a knockdown. I don't remember. I do remember when I was younger, I was really thin, didn't have a lot of strength. So I was tall, but I still shot. People listen to how Del Curry transformed Steph's shot when he was like in seventh, eighth grade and kind of had to bring it up a little bit. Well, I kind of, shot from down there and eventually my athleticism and my height, started bringing the ball up. I think a lot of it was just I had good mechanics, good teaching, from day one. And then I just really worked. I really, I really worked at it. Um, I think my height, the combination of my height and the athleticism that I did have, um, and the fundamentals that I learned early all contributed to that. And I think from the accuracy and the confidence part, uh, I just always felt, always was compelled to put myself in situations, um, like challenging situations, like in the game or in practice. It's almost like just keep figuring out where this thing can go. And I think so. I think that led to a lot of like guys who excel, I think, late in games, and it's like they're trying to figure out how they can push themselves in situations all the time, I think, and put themselves in challenging situations so that they can experience something new.
That's a perfect segue into my next question. You've described the 1990s as an era of scoring assassins, spotlighting players like Tracy McGrady alongside Michael Jordan. With today's NBA offering different rules and pace, what do you miss most? And what do you appreciate more in today's guards?
Well, that's a great question and analysis all together in one. So I think what I miss is that, right? In the 90s, I still think someone should do something on this where our position in the 90s, I don't know if there's been an other era, at least for the two guard position. I mean, you go down all the names: Mitch Richmond, Michael Jordan, Reggie Miller, even AI, Stackhouse, Ray Allen, Steve Smith. I mean, it just Rip Hamilton, just Michael Redd, just keep going, right? And so in that era, every single night, people that position is really trying to own their space. And you have to do it in so many different ways. With a Reggie, you got to guard and make him guard differently than you do with Michael Jordan, Mitch Richmond, J.R. Ryder. So the individual matchups every night at that position is probably what I think I miss and what basketball misses. Because it's a shooting guard, right? So that matchup, and then the way we had to score is different now, right? It's a smarter, more efficient way to play, but I'm not sure if it's as fun to watch. You know what I mean? Uh,
Outside shooting.
well, just every 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 kind of set looks the same now. You got five out. You have someone at the top doing a dribble handoff. You got a ball screen. You got a drive, penetrate, kick out for a three, drive to finish at the rim. And that's kind of what it is. Now uh, it makes it for, like I said, more efficient, harder to guard altogether. But I think I missed the individual kind of matchups that happened,
Yeah.
at the position, right? Where you might have a more of a one-on-one battle that still
Yeah.
flowed within the game.
Yeah. It used to feel almost more personal with the one-on-one matchups.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
now it's screen, drive, screen, kick out.
Yeah. It's not, and you're not encouraged to make it an individual one-on-one battle. And it's not smart, but at some point you still have to, as you've watched going to the playoffs, if you watch, the guys in the playoffs who at the end of games end up making plays or making shots, that's what they do, right? They figure out how they can manipulate the defense or the defender because they're the best player out there.
Who are a couple guys now that you think would have been, I don't know, more successful in that style of basketball?
Well, technically, because I'm still in the Knicks front office, I can't really talk about other guys, but I'll say that
Yeah.
I really like um, how obviously Jalen is a guy I think could have played in any era. Brunson, I think Cat,
Yeah.
any era. OG Anunoby, any era, right? And just because the versatility, the size, the skill set, um, and the mentality, you
I'm gonna
know,
go the other way then, since you can't answer. If you
yeah.
could bring one of those '90s guys, it can't be yourself. If you could bring one of those '90s guys on your team, your current roster, who would you bring?
Spree and probably Marcus. Uh, I think I was gonna say Charlie Ward, because but I think we have a little bit of that, in Deuce McBride. Um, I mean, I could keep going. I mean, Kurt Thomas, could play anywhere on the floor. He was one of the best shooters on our team, but he never got a chance to show it. You know, um, so he could guard. Really could sit down and guard a lot more positions than you think. So those are probably the names I would say.
Unfortunately, injuries cut your playing career shorter than it might have been. How did you deal with the disappointment of your body not cooperating with your will?
Oh, that was tough. That was a challenging time, um, particularly because it wasn't like an injury where it's like, okay, you have a torn this, and now you gotta rehabilitate that ligament or that joint. It was more wear and tear that you just didn't know. Um, so for me, that was tough. But then, you get to the point where you're trying to come back, and it's just not. You just don't feel like it. You can have the force, the recovery to your game. so so that made it tough. And so yeah, I remember literally like my last time on the floor. Uh, well, it's actually I actually did try to come back, which is I'm glad I tried it just so I could see because now you get the confirmation. But before I tried to come back and I really had to retire, I was in training camp and Larry Brown was about to be a coach, and I just couldn't even go through training camp. And I remember just telling everyone, just give me a week so I can, just give me a week so I can kind of like internalize everything. And I knew that in a week I felt that in a week, unless God did something miraculous, you know, my body was not going to be any different in a week. I don't know why I said a week. I just said, give me some time. And that was that time that I just said, you know what, I think I had to really deal with this. And it was tough, because it wasn't like it was sudden. It was just like a gradual, like, man, this is kind of where we are. Um, and then I kind of stepped away and had to navigate, that new space. What am I going to do? Jeff Van Gundy, my old coach, said, whatever you do, don't try to go home and run the house. that was his, that was his advice, and I literally think about that every day, because I'm saying, like, what is it that I can do? What is it I need to keep my butt away from? and and I think that's at different stages of your life, still kind of go through that. But it really was one of those things where I spoke with the Lord, man, and I said, Lord, like, I'm gonna need some wisdom. I need some guidance here because I know that whatever the next thing is going to be great. I just don't know how really to prepare for it right now.
Well, the Lord answered. It looked like you moved seamlessly into leadership roles with the Knicks organization. How did being a player prepare you or not prepare you for being on the other side in the front office?
Well, I guess I'm glad it seemed like it was seamless, but it didn't feel seamless at all. Um, because the first thing that happened was when I did try to come back, I felt like I took 2 years off. My body was ready. Went to training camp again. I'm like, nah. So Donnie Walsh, who was the president, Mike D'Antoni was a coach. They both sat me in, and even Larry Brown told me, he said, you're gonna be in the front office one day. And I never saw that. So Donnie was like, look, I want you to come in and help us with development. I want you to what he was really essentially saying is, I see you in this role. I want to help you enter and create this pathway. And I literally spoke to Donnie about 3 weeks ago. I hadn't spoken to him in a while, and I just called him to say thank you, because there's so many people in our position as former athletes or professionals, or even before you get into the professional field of whatever you're doing, even out of college, and you need that person to believe in you, to kind of say, I know you can do this, and I'm going to advocate for you, and I'm going to help you get there. And I'm 34 years old, 35 years old, and he was a person that kind of helped me, among some other people. Jim Dolan, our owner, Steve Mills, who was a former president, like people that really helped me. And I will say that my journey So I have enjoyed all of it, but I really have arrived at a point where I just want to help. I just want to help people just be better. I just want to help them be better. And recently, I've joined our chaplaincy program with the Knicks. Um, I work with kind of our performance coaches. So that's my goal. My goal is to take my lens and my perspective and my experience and offer it in any way that can help and and give some tools for this next group to thrive, basically.
What were you doing around the building that made them say that to you, that they think you'd be good in that role? Because obviously they don't say that to everybody.
Well, if I look back on it, I didn't ever ask them that, but I think when I look back on it, it was probably not what I was doing at the time, but what they saw me do as a player and handle whatever situations as a player, right? I remember when I was trying to come back and I thought about Cleveland. I thought about Cleveland being an interesting spot. And I was scheduled to go work out and I was just like, man, I'm not going to Cleveland. Like, why would I even, put anybody through this? So I called the coach, I called the GM. I didn't tell my agent to do anything. I just called him personally. I said, look, guys, I really appreciate y'all considering me, man, but I'm not really probably ready, to do this right now. And to be honest, they were like, man, like one of them, I think it was Lance Blank. Lance was like, wow, like nobody does that. Nobody just calls, you know what I mean? And I think for me, it was just what I should do, right? I don't want to lead anybody on. I don't want to drag. No, who has time for that? So I think it was just like little things like that that make you just say, well, you know what, this guy's in the building. He's got some valuable experience, and I think I just want to be around people I know what to expect and can trust as a person.
What's been the most rewarding part of mentoring younger players and seeing their growth?
Man, to be honest, I think it's very simple. It's when they want it. Like when someone wants to receive what you can give them, I think that's what's very rewarding. Because like whatever you're doing, if you're an athlete, if you're someone who has some knowledge or has some wisdom or has some valuable to give someone, it's not complicated. Like every shooting coach is saying pretty much the same thing. The shooting is what it is. But it's up to the person who's receiving it to apply it and want to keep getting better and better and apply it. That's really when it's fun, right? For someone who's giving. So at the end of the day, the most rewarding part is when a person wants what you have to give. At that point, it's magic because it's like, man, like, that's what I'm here for. But if they don't really value it or want it, then nothing really can do about that. And you just have to say, all right, well, I'm here if you need me.
Do you think you can tell that perspective better than somebody in the front office who hasn't had a playing career?
No, I mean, I think when you're around a person, like you have an idea if you're around them enough, and man, there's so many people in the building now. And that's one of the things that kind of can be an advantage, but also not too healthy. You got so many people. Now a player walks into a building, they got 30 people. And you got to think, when they walk in that building, every person in their mind works for the organization. And even as cool as they are, as much as I trust them, I'm still being evaluated, right? And that information or what I do could be used. So like there's always that, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So that's to say, I might look at a player and say, man, why did he make that decision in a split second on the floor? And maybe identify a little bit more with that because I saw that he saw another person coming. He saw this, where a person who may not have played, man, what are they doing? But if you played, you've seen that over and over in your head. And you're thinking he didn't throw that pass because he thought the defender was in the passing lane, not because he didn't want to throw it to him because they got into it. You know what I mean? Like I take what you said more as when you're watching play. When people are just around people in the building, it's just who they are in a conversation, so I think being a player helps more when you're looking at stuff that happens on the floor to me.
It's funny. I don't know what it is about what you just said that just gave me like a flashback. But my dad used to say to my brothers and I, we'd watch NFL games every weekend together. And, being little kids and you hear it on the news, or I'd be like, oh, he stinks. Oh, he should have caught that. He stinks. He just got to throw that. And my dad said to us one time, he sat us all down. He's like, listen, we're not saying that. These guys are NFL players. He's like, you can complain that you wish this happened and that happened. We're not doing any more, bad mouthing of players individual. It was funny because when you were talking about a regular Joe, like me watching basketball is just, I have no basketball IQ. So I see someone not do something, I'm like, oh, he stinks, whatever. But to you, it's like, you see passing lanes that I don't even know exist.
Yeah. Or like when a guy, like my I have a uncle who used to be like, man, how can you be a bad free throw shooter if you're in the NBA? I'm like, well,
Yeah, exactly.
I get that perspective, but until you have done all the other things that made you get that $10 million, and making a free throw is important, but they're paying you for some reason. They don't just give this money out. So I mean, that's what makes the sports world go around, man.
Troy was right. Allan, your FISLL principles are more than just words. Faith, integrity, sacrifice, leadership, and legacy. Can you share where this came from and how it became the compass for your life's work?
Well, man, first of all, Tim, I appreciate you using that word compass because it's not used a lot. I was having breakfast with my dad before a flight. We didn't miss it, it delayed. So we just had some breakfast. And I said, how would you describe FISLL? And he said, it's like a navigation system, right? And the way I kind of describe it is, it's a way of life. It's a mindset, because we know words themselves have a creative force and power because they came from the word. As a Christian, we believe that the word, like it says in John 1, in the beginning was the word, and it came to be expressed. And God's mind gave us a way to express his thoughts, his desires, his intentions, and his power. And he gave us words. And then the word, which is how he came into being on earth in humanity, was embodied in these 5 words. And I never even thought about that until I was on a plane, and I'm like, well, what are some principles that my dad kind of embodies and that we want to teach and share together, and that's what came on this piece of paper on a plane. But I never really thought of it as what it was going to be. It has become, my guiding compass, as you say, but it also has become a framework for how I can, at least, if I don't know someone, I can start a conversation around these 5 words, and man, it's powerful. It just moves, right? And in the community where we use it for a curriculum and a kind of a life coaching system, we have learned that it has been very effective at altering mindset and behavior change. So character development is something that I'm really big on. The words themselves started off as basically a kind of a framework and a curriculum that we were using in our mentoring and leadership programs. We've developed curriculum. It is really a system of thought. It's a system of behavior. It's really a way. In John 14:6, when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And when he says I'm away, if you just think about that, like think about when a coach says, "Hey, way to be, man, way to be," right? And that's basically, in its nutshell, what we're saying. It is a way to be. It's a way that you just go about your daily life, your process, your thinking, and but we can boil it down into language, curriculum, but we can lift it up all the way to let's have some thoughtful conversations around these principles and where they lived in your life. And so I think it gives us a really cool, versatile way to just challenge thought, and challenge perspective. Where does your faith, like, and I'm not asking you this, but to ask someone, how you even define faith? Where does your faith come from? What is true integrity? Really, what really is it? Where do those things come from? And I can say, okay, yeah, they came up from my values, my background, but I can also say, let's dive in a little deeper and say who in history has fully embodied all these. And it's only really one person, that's Jesus Christ. Right? Because he's the author of faith, and he gave us the ultimate example of integrity because it was through that faith, because we became righteous because of him and because of his sacrifice, right? And then you think about leadership is bringing people together through your common goal and vision. And then the legacy is obvious because we can have eternal life. That is the whole purpose. And so I get excited because I can talk about that, or I can talk about basic principles in life, and they all work depending on like where you are, where we are. And from a mentoring and leadership standpoint, we found that especially this next generation are really trying to figure out three things: value, identity, and purpose. And so we're going to start these things called VIP lounges. And the VIP lounges are for people who we want to engage in these conversations around value, identity, and purpose through the lens of these 5 words. And it's about community. People want to be a part of a bigger community, or not a bigger one, but a community of something that's bigger than themselves. And I think people just want to have something that's real, that's tried and true, and that challenges them to just level up. And I think that's that's what we're finding. And we want to have a place for that, but also tangible things that represent that.
I was just at your guys' practice facility. That my sister's husband is Adam Fox on the Rangers.
Oh yeah, okay.
And my son was skating with him at that your guys' practice facility. When you walk in, it's like,
Yeah.
Knicks to the left, Rangers to the right. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's a pretty dynamic facility, man. It really is. I mean, and it's been 24
My dad
years.
said, "Amen."
That's right. Right. It's been 24 years, that facility.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Hey, I wanted to ask you about the impact of social media. It gives today's players a platform you and your peers didn't have. Do you see it as more of a distraction, a motivator, or maybe both?
It's both. I think it's both. I think it's like the whole thing of what you feed is what's going to grow, type philosophy is. The challenge though is it was built, I think, well, I would say social media is media, right? It's mass communication and, but I think the idea of technologies and platforms that originally were meant to, keep people connected through digital and internet have become more destructive than helpful because of our human nature and our incapacity and our inability and not and lack of discipline and knowledge in what is really important. So our human nature, you know, our kind of fleshly desire, worldly desire, uh, is like, how can I best serve me and lift me up to show and add value? And that becomes behavioral, and from a brain health, it becomes so destructive. But when we can kind of like be trained and equipped and mindful to do it in a way that's trying to lift up, it can become productive. It's just a really, really hard battle. It's a hard battle. Uh, as adults, we're not equipped. So imagine, what our kids are, especially if that's all they know. We have an alternative of saying, "Oh, that's turn that off." They don't really. That's all they know. So it's like we're so we have to. I mean, I have seven children from 13 to 26, and it was easier when my older kids were younger because it wasn't as accessible, wasn't as useful. Now, it's like to say, put your phone away and do all this. You can say that but there's so many things that are connected to them. But I still think at the end of the day, it's up to us as parents to be, disciplined and have the energy and the fortitude, to say, this is for the health of my child. Even though I might not show up on the exterior, you got to know, you know, that we got to protect them.
It's challenging for parents now because social media is in kids' face at every turn. Allan, your father knows best retreats with your dad are powerful. What have you learned about fatherhood by teaching it to others?
Hmm. Uh, so much of it is what I'd already seen and learned. Uh, that's why I like Fizzle, because the principles are what they are. They got to be applied differently in different stages of life, different stages of the world, how the world has changed. But the principles are universal. They don't change. So, for example, one of the first things that we did when we named it Father Knows Best is it wasn't because we wanted to make this statement that the biological male and father is superior. It was because the Heavenly Father is all knowing. And our role as a biological father is to be a reflection of the Heavenly Father. So we wanted to make the statement right off the top that Father Knows Best is just that. It is the correlation between the biological father and the Heavenly Father, and how the characteristics should be similar. Uh, and once we kind of lay that foundation, then what I like is the next part is it gives a, especially with men, not that this doesn't happen with women, but with the men, it gives a time and a space and a place for conversations and connection to happen, where I know still as a father, I'm 7, I still kind of find like, what's some unique way I can just talk and connect, and without having to force a conversation, you know, um, you know what I mean? And try to pull something that they may not really be wanting to talk about, but I know they need to talk about. So the strategy in that is tough, but this gives us a chance to provide a space where they're doing something together, having fun, and then let's give you a point of reference for some things to kind of talk about and connect on. And I think that's what I've learned is, man, that's as powerful as it gets. Just the consistency of love and just being there. A lot of kids, they may not remember a lot of things, but they're gonna remember if you were there and you were consistent. And I think what I've learned is a kind of a theme that remains.
When you think about your legacy, what do you hope people say about Allan Houston, the man, not just the player?
Passionate, love for people, love for what he did. Maximize. I think about uh, the theme and throughout the scriptures where it talks about multiplying your gifts and talents. And whatever God has given me, did I multiply it? Did I maximize it? Or did I let it just kind of sit there? So that's one. Um, did I love, when Jesus asked us to love him, love others. Um, and yeah, I don't want to shortcut anything. I don't want to be known as anyone who's shortcutted anything. Um, just maxed out, really, but not just maxed out for the sake of doing it, but maxed out through the lens of these values. That's why I'm just so grateful for them, because that's a hard question to answer. It's a hard one to answer, but if I go back to those, yes, was I a man of faith? Not from my faith, but was I conscious of the faith that when he said, by faith you're righteous, not by your works? Was I conscious of that? And was I led by the Holy Spirit? Was I mindful of other people, not to the detriment of my family, but was I mindful of other people? So that's, those things, even within FISLL, help me answer that question. And I want that to help other people answer that question, because it's not an easy one to answer.
It's hard too, and you're still writing the story, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's a beautiful thing about even the word legacy, right? We have a thing that we're about to come out with called legacy as a verb, and what that means is what you just said. Like, it's not something that you look back on. You actually more so look now and look forward, and like, I'm actually writing that. I'm actually defining that right now, and not looking back, right, and what I've done, but what I want people, to say and do. And the only way you can define that is you're writing it now.
You have a lot of book left to write. Allan, you've balanced being a husband, a father of 7, a professional, and a mentor. How do you keep your family at the center of everything you do?
Oh man, that's the biggest balance. It's probably still the biggest challenge in my life, Tim. Um, because every single day, there's multiple moving parts in that. Literally, from son texting me, oh, can you pick me up from here, to, oh, such and such has a scrimmage, to who's not going to church Sunday, because I still have a responsibility to be the priest of the home. I can't depend on the word and their spiritual relationship being I can't depend on it solely coming from outside my home. Right. So I gotta be mindful of that. Then I gotta be mindful of my wife and how we are aligned and one, and thinking about where we're trying to go at this stage. And there's this, man, it's a lot, and thank God, man, for an incredible wife. Thank God for an incredible wife. So that is that's what I'm answering probably every 10 minutes.
We'll have to clip that part of the episode so you can send it to her anytime you guys get in an argument.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll help, but it'll be good to have.
Faith is such a big role in both of our lives, and I was wondering what originally brought you towards faith. And if you could talk about what it means to you.
Originally, it was something that we saw, we talked about early growing up. My mother, uh, my grandparents were people of faith. Um, my mother was always, it was something that always kind of came out of her mouth somehow. You know, believe it's gonna be okay. Like this, her countenance was of faith. Um, when situations and circumstances can tend to overwhelm you, I felt like our home was always like, that's not going to happen because we just got to know, got to believe that it's going to work out. Um, when I was 15 or 16, I felt the real call of God. I got up in front of our church and I said, "Hey, I'm ready to commit my life to Christ and officially accept." Even though in my heart I had from a knowledge perspective. But Romans 10:9 said, if you believe in your heart and you confess with your mouth and you make it known, it's like that act of proclamation. And I did that. Uh, and it's been a journey. It's been, I was talking to a family member of mine, and he's a football coach. And he was like, and I think I asked him, like, what are some of the commonalities in some of the players that you coach that you just get it, they excel, or whatever the question is. He said, man, self-belief. I mean, self-belief is so powerful. And as I'm listening, I'm like, okay, I like that. Self-belief. I'm trying to, like, what are the other dimensions, right? But that definitely falls into this category of faith. And then he said, I guess in your case, in your faith, in your religion, that self-belief still comes from God. And he jumped right ahead of me, because in my mind I'm going to say, okay, how am I going to kind of like interject here that I don't want just self-belief. I don't want, because that's going to be limited. And I want a faith that's way bigger than beyond me, that is all knowing and it's all encompassing. And I think that's where the way I look at faith is, first of all, it's a gift. It's a gift. I didn't just all of a sudden wake up and say, hey, I want some faith. I'm gonna go get some faith. There's something that God in his amazing nature gave us to connect with him and to identify. And it's through that faith that I can have a real relationship with him, not by me just deciding to be a good dude or be a good person, or no, it's by accepting who he is and what he's done. And that's faith.
So what gave you that? Like you said, at 16, you stood up in front of the church and kind of like professed it, but did something happen in your life that you felt like, okay, this is it, I feel the calling? We've had a few people on that have talked about their kind of spiritual journey, and I'm always so interested in that. Whenever people mention they have a moment like that, I'm always like looking for something, and maybe there isn't anything tangible with it, but I'm always looking for, like, you know, they heard a voice, or they had a dream, or they had, like, is there something that kind of tangible moment, or is just time in your life to do it?
I think it was just over time. It was like stacking up, moments, stacking up. I don't think there was any one thing. Um, it was almost like, I would just say it was overflow of the seeds and water, that seeds have been planted, water has been poured, and just, I mean, I was 14. We grew up going to church, since I can remember. And I think at some point I was at a stage where, what is I have to have my own relationship with the Lord. I think that's really what it came down to. Is like, it was almost like the Lord was telling me, like, look, you're about to enter into a stage in your life where you're going to be far from a far from a young person. You're going to be seen as someone bigger, than life, bigger than yourself. I was 14. I was going to that stage. It started as a freshman in high school. My sophomore year, we went to the state championship, lost in overtime, and played in Rupp Arena. It was 23,000 people. Um, and I think it was like God was saying, let's go. It's time. And I can't put it in like specific exact words, but it was really like, it's almost like, when a student leaves high school and leaves their home, and now they got to go off on their own and depend on another authority figure, adult, someone to guide them. And it was almost like, hey, it's us now. It's us. You can't depend on your parents' faith now, your parents' relationship. And I felt like that's what God was really telling me. But He was also, what I did not, one thing I would have done, why I think youth ministry is so important, is I didn't have that real discipleship. I went up and I was like, hey, this is who I am, what I'm trying to do. But I didn't have that discipleship. I didn't have the the spiritual coaching in an intimate way until I was probably 25.
I'm glad you said that. It's a journey, not a sprint, just like any relationship. Anyways, Allan, at the end of every podcast, I like to give our guests the opportunity to brag about their family. So please brag away.
Oh, well, I got to pick up with my wife, obviously. Met in Detroit when I just landed in Detroit. Mutual friends introduced us. She was a senior at Michigan State. Um, I mean, from the day I met her, you could tell she was so, man, energetic, passionate. I mean, when I think about the five tenets of FISLL, I mean, she was all there. I mean, and just her integrity, her work ethic. Um, I don't know how she thinks of everything she thinks of. Um, Went and got her degree, and then when we got married here in New York, she started off doing having her own mentoring organization that she was working with. Went to marketing, and then when we had our first two children, she went and she got her graduate degree in education, an hour away from where we live, while I was playing. And I mean, it's hard to describe. It's hard to describe her. I mean, if you look at her now and say this woman has 7 children, 13 to 26, you wouldn't even believe it. But just passionate. I mean, just so passionate, and it just doesn't miss a beat. Like, scary, because we were on the beach the other day, and she's like, I think we might need to get going. I mean, literally, as soon as we picked our chairs up, the tide came up, and I'm like, yo, that's crazy, So I think there, and then my daughter, my oldest daughter, is amazing, just a sweet, sweet spirit. I went to NYU in bio and chemistry, and working now, serving in the healthcare system. My son played 4 years at Brown football, did a fifth year at Louisville, and just again, just an incredibly hard worker, just a humble guy. He's always had this thing of humble, hardworking. Um, Now he's working in finance. Then I have a daughter who's at Vanderbilt. She's a high jumper, loves the Lord, and a lot like her mother, just so determined. Wants to go into social politics. Um, and then I have three in high school. Three daughters in high school. They're working. One's working. getting doing a college at. One's volleyball, one's soccer. Uh, and then my youngest son is 13. And he's the one I like his delusion because he says, I'm gonna dunk on you and, I'm gonna do moves that you didn't do in the NBA. And, the whole thing, right? And uh, I just think of, so one of our social media organizers asked me this question about, she said, if someone were to ask you, like, that may not have had a father like you or may not have had your experience, you know, and they want to go into leadership. They feel led to lead. They feel led to be kind of set apart. What would you tell them? And the first thing I thought of was uh, ask God for your true vision, like he did Joseph. Like he gave Joseph a vision, and everybody thought he was crazy. And he might not have handled that vision early the right way, but he still gave him a very specific vision, and that was his mission. And then I say, just work your butt off. Just be a good work on yourself. A lot of people don't want to work, don't know how or want to work on themselves these days because we're such a narcissistic world, and we gotta do the hard work of working on ourselves. But a lot that's hard work. So I feel like when I brag on my children, I do feel like they're really good people, and they work really hard. And I just give God all the glory for that.
Alan, I want to ask one more basketball fan question. You've probably had this 1,000 times, but in your career, you obviously have the shot over Miami. Do you have another moment that stands out as like maybe it's not as recognized by the fans, but a favorite moment or two?
Well, I would say going to the finals, the moment that that happened after that actually had more meaning. Uh, January 11th, 1999, Game 6. Uh, we beat the Pacers to win the Eastern Conference Championship. Uh, LJ went down, had a knee injury. Patrick was out. Uh, I had 22 in the fourth. We won that game to go to the finals, but my daughter was born the next day. And I'll never be able to separate my in-game experience from my conscious thought of my daughter being born if we win that game. So I think that was probably one that will always go down because usually when you're playing, you're not thinking about anything else. And I wasn't kind of consciously thinking about it, but I felt like I had a piece of something, PEACE, uh, that it didn't really matter what happened in that moment. You know what I mean? And I just felt like I was like outside of the moment.
And then last one here for me is what did it mean to you, like to be the Knicks are so iconic in the basketball world, I guess globally, really. What did it mean to play for the Knicks?
I guess to sum it up, it's the world's famous arena for a reason. It's not just a name, right? It's not just a tagline that goes around the branding of Madison Square Garden. When you play in that building, you know it's the most coveted performance place. And I got to do it for 9 seasons, at least 41 times, including the playoffs. And every time you do it, you realize that you're doing, you're at the top of anyone who's ever wanted to do this. And you never once take that for granted. The energy of that building is unmatched. And I truly believe the energy of the New York fan is unmatched. And to say that you were able to do that, uh, not just one season, but the thing that I really look back and appreciate and I thank God for is that it was hard, man. It was really hard. But I was able to say, man, you were a piece of that experience. Um, that's very, very rare. Like to play in the NBA is rare. To play in that building for 9 seasons, and I look back and really appreciate it. I don't wasn't all me. It wasn't me. It was just me being open to be used. But I do really appreciate uh, obviously to be in the NBA, but to play in New York, man, it's uh it's different. It's different, and to have been part of some success there is you appreciate it. And I look at now when I watch basketball at every level, from watching my son just shoot to watching, I think about that. I'm thinking about, man, no matter what anybody says, whatever I think, I was able to play this game at the highest level on the biggest stage for 9 seasons. And that's feels pretty cool.
It's definitely pretty cool.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, on to our final word segment where we ask our guests a few rapid fire questions. What was the happiest moment in your life?
Probably that moment when I was about to have my child and we went to the finals and all in 24 hours.
What is the biggest adversity you've faced?
Not being a knucklehead a couple of times in my marriage, fighting through, the adversity of struggles that every man in marriage goes through. I think that one, and then my injury, my knee injury, trying to figure that out. I just I had prostate cancer, and my father and I both beat that. And to be honest, I wasn't really worried or concerned about that, right? Um, but but things that involve other people, and things are on the brink of maybe not holding up. That's when your prayer life really kicks in.
What are you most excited about?
I'm excited about my my kids and my family and the next stage that God has for them, and my ministry.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Find a little bit more accountability in your spiritual relationship. Like find someone who's really walking with you a little bit closer with the Lord. That's it. That's all I got. Everything. I mean, I don't have any regrets. Uh, but that's one thing I would say.
Do you have any book recommendations for us or for the listeners?
Man, that one I wish I would have had. But there's one I just gave my son, Make Your Bed. I think forgot. Have you heard of that one, Make Your Bed?
I'll have to
Uh
look it up.
Simple. It's a very simple book. I'm reading one now called Second Set of Eyes. It's basically for people who are in leadership. You might be a manager or someone, you might be a general manager who's helping coaches. I think coaches need coaches. And I think that's kind of where I am now, is like a lot of people who are in leadership who seek out ways that they can grow themselves or grow their leadership. I think it's something that we need to do.
The name of our podcast is Nothing Left Unsaid. Do you have anything you want to say?
You know what? Join Team Fizzle. You know, we're trying to grow a bunch of really cool, really amazing leaders who want to embody the principles of faith, integrity, sacrifice, leadership, and legacy, and just support our mission.
Awesome. Allan, last question I ask every guest at the end of the episode. Now that you kind of got to meet us for a little bit and see what the kind of vibe of the podcast, who are a couple of people that you know personally that you think we should try to get on the podcast?
Like Russell Wilson, be a good one. Carl Anthony Towns Sr., probably a cool one. Been doing some work with some of the NBA dads. I think
Yeah.
might be like a good connection there. You know, when you think about, whether it's Chris Paul's dad, like a lot of the dads in NBA are you don't hear about it, but they're very active and they're very passionate. And so I could put you in touch with someone there. And then another one too that we're trying to work together is because I've been helping serve as chaplain for the Knicks is, you could look into a lot of the chaplaincy programs with the sports, the chaplains of sports teams, whether it's in the NBA, NFL, baseball, soccer, whatever. I think that's a very um, underappreciated in a network that needs to be connected.
I just want to thank you not only for sharing your story today, but for the way you've lived it. From the NBA spotlight to the work you're doing now, you've shown us that true greatness isn't just about what you achieve, but what you give back. Your voice, your faith, and your leadership have a ripple effect that goes far beyond the court, and I know our listeners will walk away with lessons they can apply to their own lives. I'm grateful for your time and your valuable insights. Wishing you continued success in everything you're building, and I hope God continues to bless you and your family.
Man, can't thank you enough. I was excited about this, and I'm even more excited that I got a chance to hear questions and thoughts, and I can see why God has blessed your platform, because even just the questions you ask and how you guys doing are amazing, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Go Knicks.
That's right.